Hello everybody, welcome to a new tutorial from Sound for More. Today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Bleass Omega, a fantastic new FM synth released by Bliss. So it is based on frequency modulation synthesis, which, as you know, is used to modulate the frequency of an oscillator using a modulator, the amplitude of another modulator. But this tutorial is not so much about FM synthesis, but if you'd like to know more and if you need more help, just drop a comment and I will create some tutorials on it. Before I start, I'd like to remind my viewers to subscribe as it helps with growing the channel. Thank you very much. So, as any other application from Bliss, it is fully AUV3 compliant, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to run it as a standalone application, but it works perfectly well as an AUV3 instance. And the reason I'm running as a standalone application is because I have more screen on the iPad, so you can see hopefully better when I go through the explanation of how it works. I do my best to cover most of the functionality, but of course, if I miss anything, just drop a comment. Okay, so as I mentioned, it is based on FM synthesis. And if you used synths like, for example, a Yamaha DX7 or Montage, then you know what we are referring to. When it opens up on this screen for the frequency modulation screen, and you have 4 operators, as you can see, operator 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, they are color coded, which is quite nice because they are easy to identify. Also on the left hand side, you see the algorithms, which are very important in FM synthesis because they allow you to select the way that each one are combined. Normally you start with one which is very simple to understand. The number 1 I think is quite simple. So you click on here and it gives you a list and you can scroll up and down. You have 11 different algorithms. Number 1 is very simple to learn from. You can move to the next one clicking on the arrow on the right and also to the previous one click on the arrow on the left. If you look at this algorithm, it starts from the top. It means that the red operator is modulating the blue operator is modulating the green operator, and the green operator is modulating this orangey or yellowy operator. And then you see also this line going into itself on the red operator number 4, which means that you have feedback, i.e. is taking the output to self-modulate back itself, which is part of working with FM synthesis. It's one of the parameters. So let's go through the interface, and I also will play some patches because it's quite outstanding. It's quite nice as a thin synthesis, as a synth itself. So up here on the left, you have the able to link, which you can enable or disable. Very simple. You have the references there as well to the ableton.com website. Here you have a play button, which becomes very handy because when you work with motion, you can set it to work as a bit, and therefore when it is active, you see that the motion sequencer will play or stop based on the play button being on and off, and of course the state being on and off. Here you have your tempo selection. You can click on the plus and minus to increase or decrease the tempo as well, which again becomes handy in the motion sequencer, but also, for example, on the modulation, if you select beat, and also, for example, on the arpeggiator, again, if you select sync or beat. You have a selection for audio and MIDI here. You can set a buffer size, so if you have problems with older iPad and you want to increase the size or decrease it depending on what is really happening, but if you hear the cracklings or some interference, perhaps trying to increase the buffer size. Underneath here you can enable the MIDI, so you can have it on and off. You can also set the channel for receiving all or a specific one channel. And then of course you can enable to do control mapping as well, which allow you to map the controls to your external knobs or slider, depending on the controllers that you are using. Also, you have the possibility to connect a Bluetooth device. So I just turn on my Akai LP25 wireless, I enable wireless, and if I click where it says not connected, it will show connected. Let's click outside, and if I play, perfect, it's playing this Dreamer piano, which is selected over there. You can share a preset, so you can import preset, you can export a preset, and you can export all user presets, which is really nice. And then right up here on the top right, you have the ability to actually buy additional preset packs, and I suggest you do so, particularly if you like the synth, as there are some very nice presets that I'm sure you will like. Important to note the version here, because I'm sure there will be update of Bleass Omega. Click on it and it gives you a little bit more insight in terms of how to reach Bliss, how to contact them, and also related links to social media. Click on the X here to exit that screen. Next, we have the traditional selection of presets in Bliss application. In the middle, you have the preset, which is selected with an star in front of it if you have modified it. And then you have out on the left and on the right to move to the next preset or to the previous preset. As you can see now, you don't have the star in front of the Dreamer piano because you have not modified it. So if you click on where it says Dreamer piano, you have the traditional interface from Bliss where you can save and therefore override the preset, save as a new one, rename it or delete it. And here you have your bunks, right? You use a bank, your favorite banks, bank A, B, and also some artist banks. If you click on whole, you have access to all the preset, of course. And I normally do that because I want to go to my default one where which is the one I use to actually go through the tutorial. If you click on the star, of course, you can favorite that preset, which means it becomes available under here, under the selection of favorite, and you can unfavorite it, click on the start again, and if you go out and back in, you see that that favorite has disappeared. Okay, so let's leave it on the favorite for now, and let's come out, so clicking again on the name of the preset. Next, we have a dice, which is used to randomize parameters and therefore creating new sounds, which is really cool. I would just buy it for this functionality because it creates such a, new type of sounds, particularly because you have FM synthesis on. Of course, it depends very much on what happens on the randomization of the parameters. And you might have to click several times to get something that you like. I use these normally to start the creation of new presets, and I'm sure some artists do that as well. And so on and so forth. Now, let's choose another preset, go back to the default, and now we have the default preset without any alteration. Okay, next we have the view of the keyboard. At the moment we have a keyboard at the bottom, controls at the top, so keyboard here, control at the top. You can change that to have all keyboard, which is very nice, particularly if you're using the iPad or your iOS device in live performance. So you can just use your fingers directly on the iPad, you have more space. Really nice. Or you can split the screen into two, and therefore you have two keyboards, one at the top and one at the bottom. And you can see on the right hand side you have a duplicated selection related to the keyboards, which I'll go through in a moment. So let's go back to the first selection where I have the controls at the top. So in the middle you have the controls with menus, which we'll go through in a moment. And then at the bottom you have your keyboard, and you have here the selection of the octave, so you can go lower an octave. Okay, and that is affecting as you hear the octave on the screen. But not the external controller. As you can hear, it's not changing. Here you have your pitch bend. And then you have your modulation wheel. The modulation wheel impacts the sound depending on the selection you have on. So in this case, if you're under general, you see under modulation here, it says modulation wheel. When it is turned on, it will impact 100% the vibrato amount. And you have two destinations in the modulation section, and they're both set to vibrato amount. But, for example, you could say, change that to pitch. In this case, the modulation wheel will actually change the pitch. So let's try. But we'll also change the vibrato amount because I have two destination. Okay. So you have the keyboard in the middle, and then you have a number of selection, which is standard for all Bliss applications. So you have the scale at the top where you can select chromatic or diatonic. If you select the diatonic, you can choose the key as well. And when you're choosing the key, you can select the major or minor. Very simple. Really nice. And of course, let's go back to chromatic. You have support for MPE. So you have glide support, which you can turn on. And you also have support for slide, and you can have it relative or absolute. So if you go to the modulation screen here, you go under slide, and let's say we select pitch, and we say the amount that will be altered or changed will be up to 100%. So at the moment it is relative, so wherever I click on the keyboard, it will sound the same. And then as I move up and down, it will move up and down from that position. So it's relative to that position. So if it is very high, when I move it down, it will move much more to lower register. But you can have an absolute. In that case, it really depends vertically where you click on the key. Okay, that's your preference. And of course, you can have also pressure, which again, you need to configure here which parameter, whether it's pitch or something else, and then the amount, and then you can change the pressure manually, or if you have a controller which supports MPE, then of course you see that changing based on pressure. Next you have scroll, which is one of my favorite view, because when you play on the iPad, on the keyboard on the iPad, directly on the screen, you can quickly move up and with your finger move left and right. And therefore shift within the register, which is really nice. And then you have the hold option to hold the note. Nice and simple. Okay, so let's go back now to go through all the different menus, because this is where we start with the explanation of how everything works. So I'm going to start not from the general, I'm going to start from FM synthesis. And I just wanted to give you a quick, first of all, overview what you can create very quickly. So let's say that I stick with this algorithm number 1, which is very simple. Let's say that I put a maximum, the ADSR, because as you notice, every operator has an attack, decay, sustain, and release envelope, which is shown here as well for each one, which is really nice because not only you can combine operators, but you also have independent ADSR, but you also have a micro one, which is this time one, which will increase the effect of the ADSR overall for all the operators. So you can have control for ADSR at operator levels, but also overall, which is really nice. Now let's set the decay down to 0 and also the release down to 0 for all the operators. Okay, let's set the course here, which is the frequency. So the sound in this case is not fixed because the fixed is off, which means the frequency will be determined by the key you press on the keyboard multiplied by the course, and of course fine adjusted by the fine adjustment here. So let's leave that to 1. The second one, let's move it to 3. And we move it to this volume, and of course if the volume is 0, the operator 2 in this case will not modulate operator 1, right? So the third one, operator 3, we leave it to 1 and we increase the volume something like that, and the last one to 2 and we increase the volume a little bit like that. So let's test how it sounds. Nice already, but Let's give it a little bit more attack for each operator, something like that. Right, let's try now. Really nice, really nice. And don't forget, you have a lot of other options. Again, just a simple example. Let's say that I enable filter. Really nice. Automatically, you can see I have created a quick preset, just changing the configuration of the operator. And I have only used algorithm number 1. But again, if you were to use other algorithm, let's put this back on, to number 2, 3, you notice immediately the difference. Compare number 1 to number 11. Very different. Of course, you need to study the configuration of the algorithms and then decide how you're going to change the setting for each operators. Now, let's put this back to off in terms of filter, and let's go back to the FM menu. So you have 4 operators and 11 different algorithms. Each operator has an ADSR here, but this can be overridden by this micro controller here or dial called time. So let me show you. If I put a little bit here of release on the first operator, let me increase time. A little bit more. Now let's put this to 0, double click it. Now let's try again. You can hear it has overridden and made much longer the release, so it is overriding overall the ADSR. And remember, it can go also in the other way. It can also be negative as well. And that's key. That's important. Now, for each operator, it can run as not fixed frequency, which means it will take the frequency of the keys which is pressed, and then of course it will multiply by these cores, and it will make a final adjustment with your fine dials. Okay. Nice and simple. And you have also a velocity here. So if you set it to maximum, for example, and I press very low on the external controller or harder, you can hear that it is velocity sensitive. And that's quite nice because you can set that individually for each of the operators. Really, really nice. And you can, of course, adjust the volume for that operator. You have also fixed frequency mode where the frequency is fixed here. You still have a velocity dial, but you have a multiplier now, which allows you to effectively explore higher or lower ranges of frequency. So remember, depending on the multiplier, you can go finer in the selection of frequency or a little bit broader. And you can, of course, activate fixed for all the operators, or you can have mixed of them as well. So, and that again is really nice because not only you have an ADSR, which is independent for each of operators, you have normally volume as well, which is independent for each operators because you need to set the right amplitude to modulate the other operators. But you have fixed or not fixed frequency with fine tuning, coarse tuning, and of course if it is fixed you have a multiplier, and that is independent from each operator. So you are well in your right to create something on operator 1 which is not fixed, but then saying on operator 2 I want it fixed, and it will change completely the sound, which is what you would expect. Now on the left here we have feedback. The feedback acts on the where the operator has feedback. So in this case is the yellow operator, sorry, the red operator or the operator number 4. Remember that depends on your configuration because operator 4 modulate operator 3, 3 modulate operator 2, 2 modulates operator 1, and it depends from the algorithm that you choose. So something like this one will have more impact, right? So and depending also on the totality of the configuration as well. Okay. So you can hear it clearly now that I fixed the frequency. But again, it depends very much on how the operators are linked together. We talked about the time which control or dial which overrides the ADSR. And then, of course, you have two further control. One is the octave and the tuning. So I think that is straightforward, but of course, you need to study how FM synthesis works. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial of the video, I'm happy to do other tutorials to explore, for example, how you can create I don't know, saxophone, clarinet using FM synthesis. Okay, let's move to the next preset and back so we have the default preset unaltered. One of the great things that they have added on this synth, if you go under filter, you have a Waveshaper. Waveshaper was present in other products of Bliss, for example, on the saturator. But now you have it as well inside Omega. So you have FM synthesis, but then you can actually apply some warmth or distortion on top. And so you can alter further the sound. Of course, you need to activate it. Yes, straight away a difference. You can choose different algorithms here. So play around with those. And then you have your drive dial in terms of how far you want to push it in terms of output. Of course, this is digital simulation. You have your blend here, which is effectively your wet and dry setting. You can set an offset, which becomes very important in terms of how the algorithm is applied, at which point it applies, it creates, of course, different sounds. If you look at it from a time perspective, you can choose also to apply different depth. You can see here changing up and down. You can also push more cycles inside in the signal you're modifying, like so. And you can also adjust the strength as well if you wish. Okay, so, and as I said, you can move around between different settings as you prefer. What I find really, really nice is if you go lower in the register, and if you enable also the filter, forgot I need to use the external controller. Here we go. Let's say we go further up like that, and like so. So you can create some very powerful basses introducing distortion or warmth using the Waveshaper on top of the frequency modulation synthesis. So I really like this. You have your usual filter here, so you turn it on here and then you set cutoff frequency and Q on the top. And let's reduce the envelope to 0. Because otherwise that will be applied to the filter envelope. You can apply to the filter envelope, so we'll follow this envelope here, attack, decay, sustain and release. And you can have it also to follow keyboard, to have keyboard tracking as well. Let's apply something slightly different. Let's increase the volume here to something like that so we can hear it better. And let's go back to the default one which I created earlier, to like that. And let's remove, do something like this. Let's go back to the preset I created earlier, like so. Let's give it a bit of Waveshaper as well. And you can hear now the envelope on the frequency which is going up and coming down. Right, let's make it longer of going up and going down as well. So now you hear it better than with the previous setting. Let's remove the Waveshaper again. So hopefully you hear that as well. Let's re-enable the Waveshaper, I like it. Remove keyboard tracking for filter. Even more audible. Of course, you can choose for a low pass, high pass, band pass, notch, and you can multiply also by 2 as well. As you can hear, quite powerful. So it's quite nice. You have your filter, as you can see, and you can of course have tracking on the filter. You can associate the filter to the envelope or apply an envelope to the filter with this dial, which you go positive, negative as well. And then of course you adjust your ADSR for the envelope for the filter itself. Okay. So now let's go back to the general. Here you have the meter for your output. And of course you can decrease the volume there. Up here you can decide if you want it polyphonic or monophonic. Here if you want to retrigger the oscillator or not. Here the range for the pitch bend, so 2 semitones, or you want to go up to 12. Or double click back to default. If you want to have glide on, like portamento. So you can hear portamento up and down. Then you can have vibrato, and you can set here the speed and also the amount. So hopefully you can hear the amount coming in. Here you have velocity setting for the filter and also the envelope generator. So let's put this a maximum to exaggerate, but to prove the point. So I click lowly on the keyboard, on the external controller. No much effect on the filter here based on the envelope. But if I click harder, so you can hear the difference. So again, this allows you to control by velocity filter and envelope generator. You have a session here for modulation. So you can set the two destination for modulation wheel, slide, and pressure. So as you can see, vibrato amount is set by default. So that means that as you act on the wheel, the vibrato amount will change. And you can apply setting for your slide. So moving up and down as well, as I showed earlier when we talked about MPE, and also for pressure as well. And you have a lot of selection. Just click on it and you can choose to, alter pitch, vibrato, feedback. And the fantastic thing is that you can also go and alter the parameters of each independent operator, which is fantastic, including the Waveshaper, which is brilliant. You can just say, look, I just want for you to affect the drive. Let's make sure it is on here. So it's quite powerful and quite a lot of selection, but again, it doesn't have to stop here. So for example, you can say, change on operator number 1, it's not fixed frequency, so let's change the course. So you can hear that is altering here on the operator the course settings. Really good. So you can set a lot of other destination and modulation parameters for, as I said, modulation wheel, slide, and pressure. You have an arpeggiator standard in most Bliss synth. You can turn it on here. At the moment it's running free mode, which means you set the rate here in milliseconds. Or you can have it in sync mode, and therefore bit per BPM sync, or you can have it bit sync. And I will show you the difference. There is a quite important difference, because as you will see later on, motion goes by trigger or bit, not by BPM. So that makes a difference. But let's continue. You have normal, so it will play the notes that you press on the keyboard and repeat those in the sequence you press them, or they can go up or down, or up and down, or random. So let's try. Let's go up an octave. Or random, of course. You can set to go up an octave or more. I like going up and then multiple octaves and then coming down multiple octaves. Of course, you can set it to open or less the gates for the notes that are played. More staccato when it's lower, of course. And you can set it to repeat the notes themselves once before it moves to the next note, or twice or 3 times. So really nice. So we have seen the FM page, we have seen the filter drive page. Let's go to the modulation now. Here we have 2 LFOs, and as you can see, they can run free or based on bit or trigger. Okay, trigger means triggers you press the key. Okay, and you can choose different waveforms in terms of sine, triangle, sawtooth, inverted tooth, random, square. And when you are on bit, you can also set an offset, okay, which will be a delay based on the bit in terms of when the LFO will kick in. You can set the rate here. It will be in subdivision if it is on bit, but if it is on free, it will be in second or milliseconds, okay? The same on trigger, it will be on rate as frame. Let's say that we set it on bit and subdivision, and then you have two destinations. You choose one destination, you just say, change, I don't know, the pitch by a small amount. And of course, you have two LFOs, but not only that, you can also apply an envelope generator as well. And here you set the envelope with the usual attack, decrease, decay, sustain, and release. And then you set the destination, in this case 2. Again, you pick a destination. Let's pick up operator 1 course, and then you adjust the amount. Let's give it a long attack. Let's give it more decay. So, as you can see, different possibility. You also have a motion sequencer. So here you have number of steps which you can configure here. 16, you activate it here, clicking on. And then you can change the number of steps that you have visible, like say 8. You can set for each step to play a random value, like so, or you can actually change the value yourself, and you can also have a snap to grid as well activated. You can have it to be triggered to run in a trigger mode, which means that you have to press a key, and when you press a key, it moves to the next step. And of course, it will change the destination amount that you have selected here. You have two destinations. So for example, again, it's very audible if we do pitch, right? And we set an amount. Of course, at the moment I'm pressing key all the time, but you can go by bit, okay? And here you set how many times a bit it needs to wait before actually moves to the next step. But you have, of course, to press the play button up here. So this is like act as a multiplier, really, and you can also use the trigger to say move one step. Sorry, you have to press twice for each step. As you can see, I have to press twice a key before it moves to the next step, while on the bit it works the other way around. When you are in trigger mode, you can enable the, you can run it, of course, having the ARP on. So let's stop this. Let's go to general. Let's turn on the Arpeggiator, and let's go back to the motion. The reason it's moving to the next step is because the Arpeggiator is running. Okay, so trigger mode, but the trigger mode is also triggered by the Arpeggiator itself. And you can have it reset as an Arpeggiator. So if I'm in the middle of the steps, I press again a chord and it will restart again. And then you have two modes, dispatch mode, which affect all notes, and notes mode, only the last note which was played. So you can create some fantastic sequences using the motion sequencer. And here is something I wanted to show you as well. Let me set these, for example, to bit. At the moment they're in perfect sync because the Arpeggiator is set to bit, and also the motion sequencer is set to bit. That's the only option it has apart from trigger. Let's set these to sync. So they're not anymore in sync, so there is a difference because of the nature of running sync to BPM or sync to bit itself. Okay, and that is a little bit of the motion sequencer, and I explained how this works as well when I explained the preview Bliss synth. Finally, you also have effects, so you can apply a chorus. Change the depth. Timing. The feedback. The mix. And of course the rate. You can have also tremolo, which is quite nice. You can set rate and amount, very simple. You can hear it kick in. And then of course, let's disable actually the arpeggiator. And you can have also delay, so turn it on here. You can have it in free mode or sync mode. If it is in sync mode, of course, at the time would be by subdivision of the BPM. In free mode, you use milliseconds. You can set the frequency for low pass and high pass, and also your stereo width as well here. And then ultimately you have feedback setting and mix your dry and wet. Here you have ping pong effect as well. Let's run in free mode. So hopefully you can hear that it's ping ponging from left and right. You can hear the changes when I change the low pass frequency. And the same on the high pass. And finally, you have reverb. Turn it on. You can adjust the length, the mix, low cut as well. If you want to have a pre-delay, which you can change in milliseconds. And then if you want to add a little bit of color to your reverb, and that is where you set the frequency, where you want to make that color adjustments, and so you set that frequency. Based on that frequency, it will make a different adjustment. So again, it behaves quite differently based on the different settings. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Hopefully you found this tutorial interesting and useful. If you have any question, of course, just ask. There are some fantastic presets inside. Let me show you some bass before I actually close. So let's move up. Oh, this one is really nice. You can see the Waveshaper is on. Filter is on with an envelope as well. Then you have here the LFO one, which is changing very quickly the cutoff filter with at this rate. So it's changing the cutoff filter, which is set here. So it will do left and right here. So there are very, very unique presets. Please give a thumbs up to Bliss, because this is a fantastic product. Thank you very much and see you at the next video. Bye.